Get my laundry out the picture.
We're here.
Oh, we're live. Let's go. Look at that. Welcome, everybody, to the Philly Blitz Thursday night football pregame show. Week 2 versus the Vikings. Tough one last week. We'll be able to get some of Quell's thoughts after, a close win against the Patriots. And we'll talk some Vikings football and how we're going to crush them. Go Birds. How you guys doing today?
Terrible because Terrell Edmonds and Justin Evans are starting a football game tonight.
Oh, buddy. Rubber lubber dub dub to those who celebrate 2 times because I wasn't here the last time you guys spoke. But wow, Pierre, that's a way to start a podcast, man. What
Not
a way to
podcast,
start a
pregame show.
podcast
Pregame show.
or a pregame show. But thanks for the hope. I mean, actually, it's funny because I was doing some homework into the game today, and I actually checked into one of the Minnesota Vikings chats. It was my guys over at Locked On Vikings, and they were basically saying how the Vikings fans basically looking at this game like, oh wow, y'all, we blew our one chance to win the game, and now we're gonna start the season 0-2. Like based on their history heading into the game with the Eagles in Philadelphia specifically. I mean, we know Justin Jefferson has spoken on it, but they aren't feeling real bright. Now I know at some point we're probably gonna mention how booty Kirk Cousins is on prime time. I actually just figured out that he's not too bad on Thursdays. It's Mondays that's the problem. Monday and Sunday night, he just can't figure it out. But Thursdays, he's pretty good on Thursdays, actually. That's pretty crazy to hear.
Yeah. Pierre, I understand. Unfortunately, there was this possibility of hope of like maybe we'll see Sidney Brown out there, some Avonte Maddox matchups, something other than Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds, but we got Justin Evans and Terrell Edmonds. So we'll see what happens. Now, they're the starters, but football is a game that is extremely dynamic. And I think that, if we get out there and both of them are struggling really heavily, I don't think it'll be too long until they, kind of break the metaphorical glass in case of emergency over a Sidney Brown or an Avonte Maddox. Because, at the end of the day, you can't just put
But
two full.
so to backtrack that, I kind of mentioned this to Pierre earlier when we were speaking on X or Twitter, whatever you guys seem to call it these days. And yeah, you could consider the Avonte Maddox thing as safety, but wouldn't that make you feel a bit more worrisome? I mean, I know we have Mario Goodrich who can step in and play the nickel. I mean, of course, we also spoken volumes as a group earlier about what James Bradbury could have potentially done there. But yeah, we got Mario Goodrich, but doesn't it concern you having still 2 new starters and a player playing a new position out on the field? And I mean, yeah, Maddox has played safety before, but again, new defensive scheme, things of that nature. Who knows how much work he's done with that position group?
I think it's a totally valid point, and that's why you're one of my favorite Quellisms, stuck in between a rock and a hard place, because we don't have Bradbury. We saw that they were trying Bradbury in the slot, and then you have a little bit more flexibility. Then you can bump Avonte up to safety. But when you're missing Reed and you're missing Bradbury, you run into some of these issues. So it's really just picking the lesser of two evils, man, to me. And that's why I understand the choice that they went with right now. It makes sense because you're right. You don't want to necessarily start a second-year undrafted free agent like Mario Goodrich if you're already starting one in Josh Jobe on the outside. And then, like you said, with Avonte going to play safety, it's a different position. Now, I do think that there is a lot of overlap in these last two systems and what the nickels and safeties do just in modern football to an extent. It's still different positions. To me, the only reason I was considering it is just from baseline movement skills, man. Like, Terrell Edmonds, like
He
I know
cannot
the Edmonds,
move.
huh?
He can't move.
Exactly. His feet are stuck in cement, and that's what worries me. That it's just that aspect of it, and the fact that Justin Evans ended up in the wrong places. If we
Multiple
have
times.
both of them ending up in the wrong places, which again, it's like it's hard to decide which way you want to go with this. But to me, I was almost just kind of like we're just experimenting, we're spitballing, throwing stuff out there, put like our most like athletic and high upside guys out there and hope for the best. Because to me, the swing on Terrell Edmonds versus, maybe having Avonte play out of position, it's like, I don't know how different the delta is for me when I'm really thinking about it, because maybe I'm too low on Edmonds and maybe that's where I'm going wrong, but I don't want to see our safeties fully out of position and just like looking at the ball go over their heads. I can't stand that.
Yeah, what we saw from Terrell Edmonds, the little we did see from him on Sunday against New England, it was not encouraging. Just like what we saw from Justin Evans wasn't encouraging. So I know you guys, we've talked about it a lot, but I just don't understand the point of drafting a Sidney Brown in the third round. There's been reports that, he shined in training camp and all of these things. Why not give him the chance? It just doesn't make sense to me.
So I'm going to just give me a second. Let me get to it. But I'm going to give you a list of names of some of the guys from this safety class. And you tell me if they're playing. The only one I can guarantee if they're playing right now is Brian Branch. I've seen him. He has a pick 6 on the season. Top 10 player in that class. I said that. But Antonio Johnson, Jordan Battle, Christopher Smith, Jamie Robinson. Those are just the guys that I had listed in front of Sidney Brown. And I mean, I believe I did see a little bit of Ronnie Hickman on Sunday, but there aren't many of them that were high draft picks that aren't playing football now. Some which because they have better football players in front of them. Some of them because, as we've talked about before frequently, these cornerback, safety, those type of positions are pretty hard to translate to the next level because of what these teams are asking you to do. Yeah, we were blessed getting all of these guys from Georgia who happen to be asked to do a lot of similarities to what Sean Dayside does and what we're going to ask our guys to do. But even then, they got to learn different languages, basically which one means what. And again, just getting comfortable in these positions. So I don't want it. Clearly, we understand that it's not a skill thing with Sidney. I hope everybody understands it's not a skill thing with Sidney. It's just about making sure the guy's ready. Like typically, they say the second year for cornerbacks and specifically safeties as well is when they burst onto the scene because the game is slowed down for them. And I've heard numerous of people. I think all of us have been on record stating that we believe Sidney will be a starting safety heading into next season, but it's 2 games into his career and we just haven't reached that point yet, basically. And I mean, it sucks to hear, especially when you got injuries at the position. Like, stick the kid out there and let him learn, but it's easier said than done because those positions are confidence positions, man.
Exactly.
And if you lose your confidence at those positions and you start questioning what you're seeing, that could change the whole dynamic of your development.
It's that half step. It's that half step of like, am I reading it right? And especially for a player like Sidney, you don't want him to take that half step. Like you want him to trust what he's seeing. And so, that's why I've been pushing back at you in the chat, at least, Pierre, because I tend to agree with Quell. Like, this is a guy that they see as a long run answer on the team. And one of the worst things that you can do for any player, regardless of position, is to thrust them into a position too early, have them lose their confidence, and then have to build them back up from there, right? Like it's basic human interactions as well. Like you're not going to put someone in a super hard job and then be like, yeah, well, you messed this up and now, keep trying to do that. Like, I mean, it works to an extent and you can say you have to learn to swim in the deep end, but more often than not, things don't necessarily work like that. And it's better to take your time and to ease into things. Now, the only place where I do understand what you're saying is you also kind of mentioned it, Quell. Like in a lot of these other places where these safeties who were drafted above Sidney are not playing, it's because there are better players above them at their position. We've kind of very quickly reached a point where it's becoming a question of if the guys above Sidney Brown are necessarily better than him. And so that's why it's going to be something to watch, and it's not even to say like I think Sidney Brown is some stud who's just going to come out the gate and know everything that's going on and, be playing mind games back there. But I just don't think he's #not good in Pierre's words. And that's the feeling that I get from the other guys. But for this game, that's why I've been leaning with you. I don't necessarily want to start him. I get how they're running it, but if things get bad, put in Sydney. At one point you do have to.
Well, if that's your mindset, why not just start him? Like, I feel like
See, that's why I
you're
was
not gonna
just gonna.
learn. You're not gonna learn sitting on the bench, man.
You
I
do to an
mean,
extent,
yeah,
though.
you will, you won't, but you will.
Yeah,
Like we speaking volumes about some of these quarterbacks. Hell, Anthony Richardson, we done spoke about it a billion times. Of
reps.
kid ain't got reps, he got to play type
Mm-hmm.
of thing, and that is true to an extent. Some for some other players sometimes, and especially for ones who we talk about have wanted to have the game slow down for, they got to understand everything that's going on in front of them,
Mm-hmm.
understanding the players, specifically of the player at their position's job, what they're being asked to do, how the person on the field is doing it, what they would do different, how those teams are doing. They could basically see the things that you wouldn't see when you're on the field, basically,
Mm-hmm.
which again goes into helping the game slow down. Now, I do agree with you in terms of the whole how many people are better in front of them, but in the same breath of the to push back against you, Pierre, why not just start them now? It's because if it was up to me, Sydney would play today. He wouldn't start. But again, this is probably one of the few opportunities and the chances you would like to have. One of those preseason chances, I guess specifically where, well, we got injuries at the position. He could play. Do we really want him to play in certain spots? Probably not. But in certain positions, we could put him out there, let him get used to game speed, let him see what he got, things of that nature. I do think there should be something in the game plan to ease him in. We spoke in volumes about how they blitzed Reed Blankenship on Sunday and from the depths that they blitzed him from. And I'm like, well, I understand Reed's a fast guy, but why the hell would you blitz him from back there? If you want to use Sydney doing things like that, I think you probably still get the same result because those depths are crazy. But I mean, if you want to use Sydney like that, just to let him get experience out there, seeing the game on the fly, that's cool. Now, starting him is a completely different thing because when it comes crunch time in one of these games, and you got Sidney Brown out there who's still technically learning, trying to understand what he's seeing. It's been seen defense is going to target that. They're going to find Sidney and they're going to identify him and torture him. And again, it kind of goes back to the whole confidence thing we were saying a second ago, where you don't want that aspect of him to get ruined.
Absolutely. And I mean, he's too valuable on special teams right now to risk. That man is a great gunner. I mean, come on, he smacked those dudes yesterday. And I mean, if he was playing, then we'd have two of our starting DBs as our starting gunners, which might be a lot.
Not
But
hashtag not good.
yeah, you know, we'll see, man. We always kind of feel like I still feel like Howie could make a trade. And we always hope Howie learns his lesson about some of these positions when this type of thing happens, but you got to just hope that they figure it out, right? This
I
is
mean,
how they want to build a team.
he's shown, year after year, off season after off season, he's just flat out not gonna value the linebacker position. But safety is a bit of a different story. Like, you have the acquisition of Chauncey Gardner-Johnson last year. So
Malcolm Jenkins before that.
yeah. So
And I mean, I don't mean to cut you off, Pierre, but I was having a conversation earlier and we were talking about how basically how healthy the team was last year compared to the quick start with injuries the team has gotten to this year. And it was basically like I went into just how healthy the team was, and I got reminded quickly, basically. Well, they did go through injuries. Chauncey got hurt, and then Levante got hurt. It probably wasn't as many as we went through now. And it just made me wonder, like, well, not wonder, but it just made me realize, like, damn, the depth on this football team at that point in time was crazy. And just fast forward 365 days to see where they at, specifically at the same position, is like, man, we got to get that figured out. But I mean, there are more positions on the football field than safeties, and hopefully, we won't see a whole lot of time of our safeties matched up 1-on-1 or getting paired against these Vikings wide receivers, who I actually think are a very talented group. Man, you got Jordan Addison, who scored his first career touchdown on Sunday, a beautiful deep bomb from Kirk Cousins. Justin Jefferson, who the world knows, of course, Jettis, who some call him, who had a magnificent first half. I think they said he had 7 receptions, 130 yards in the first half. And then in
Yeah.
the second half, he had like 2 receptions, 12 yards. But I mean, at the end of the game, when you see 150 yards, 9 receptions, you're still sitting there like, great game. But just goes to show you the differences from that game. And I mean, again, as I mentioned earlier, how Justin Jefferson has mentioned how this game has they like Vikings. There is no secret. They're looking forward to this game. This is one of those not only because they lost this game last year, and again, like I said, the history with this team, but let's not forget this team is the NFC champions. And make no mistake, just because it's a new season, team until there's a new champion crowned or somebody in the NFC who declares themselves as the top tier guys, this team is the pinnacle that people want to match themselves up against. So the Vikings aren't going to take this game as a joke.
Mm-hmm. You gotta know that the whole season, everyone's gonna be coming for us. We're the team to beat, and that's what happens, right? And that's why it would have been nice if we had a ring to go along with that, but unfortunately, we don't. And this is your chance to get back. And for me, I just take comfort in knowing that this team's culture is strong enough that they understand that, and they're wary of that. Um, so Pierre and I talked a little bit about the Viking. I'm sorry, the Patriots game. Do you have any thoughts that you wanted to get out there before we talk about this game a little bit?
Actually, yeah, and I can actually segue it into this game perfectly. First thing that I noticed, Sean Desai started the game very, very well. I was very excited by some of the things that he was doing early on in the game. Now, I don't know if this is a knock against the Eagles or a hat tip to the Patriots. This is something we'll find out as the season continues on. But clearly, as the game progressed along, some of those things got stale, which is why we see Mac Jones end up with the stat line what he did. And I mean, to some people, like if you're a stat sheet watcher, you say Mac Jones threw the ball 50 times. Of course, he's gonna have 350 yards. But if you watch the game, or if you went back and watched the tape, it was much bigger than he threw the ball 50 times. It was a point in time where Mac Jones got into a rhythm, and you felt very comfortable that, damn, they might really be in this football game actually.
Mm-hmm.
So is A looking to see how that gets figured out now. Of course, again, tying this to today's game specifically, I know with the Vikings last week, the Vikings they sent a lot of pressure, but they only got a sack on one of 35 dropbacks. Now I think they had a pressure rate of 35% or something of that nature, which is near the top of the league. Now, again, don't let that fool you. They didn't get much pressure on Baker. Baker felt fairly comfortable all day. So, I mean, we all understand what we saw last week from the Patriots in terms of what they sent at Jalen and trying to get him uncomfortable, things of that nature. You guys mentioned how that was a concern of you guys from last year. How much of that do you think is, again, contributed to new offensive coordinator, them trying to get things figured out? Jalen's rusty as a player who didn't play in the preseason, or that's something that's going to affect the Eagles this season?
I think it's a combination of the first, I guess, list of things that you said in terms of it being Brian Johnson's first game as an NFL offensive coordinator. Jalen not playing in the preseason. Then you got to consider the weather conditions as well. I think you have to take all those things into consideration. But I will say this: it is kind of alarming that pressure is still an issue for them. I know we talked about last year, like in terms of the hot routes or whatever. They just got to find a way to get it corrected.
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think it's tough to play Bill Belichick after a whole offseason. We went through the numbers last season. He's one of the GOATs for a reason. But this team, I have faith in this team. It's the same core, right? Basically, you're missing like some linemen, and you have a new offensive coordinator, but your new OC has been in the quarterback room with your quarterback for the last 3 years of his development, or 2 years, whatever it might be. I tend to believe that they figured these kind of things out. We'll know by the Sirianni test, right? Like you got to just see how insane he's looking by week like 4.
Hey, Mo, you sound like my wife.
Bruh,
Every time,
This
every
man did
game,
not
she be sitting there like, I don't like that face. He doesn't look confident. And I be sitting there looking like, honey, you can't judge a football game through a face. It ain't played on paper and it ain't played on faces. And she be like, something bad about
I'm
him.
not saying that. I'm not saying
He
that.
looking.
I'm saying when we see him in the presser, in the
dark
presser on
dark
Monday
circles
morning,
around his
it's the
eyes.
black circle test. Yeah, I want to see how big are the bags under his eyes, because that tells me he's been grinding the tape. And every season you see him, by the end of the season, it's like, brother, take a week off, go get some sleep, bro. Like, we'll be fine for a couple of days. Like, just take a day. But yeah, all joking aside, I think that they're gonna just figure these things out. It's concerning that it's the same problem, but again, it's the same thing we said last year. It's not that difficult of a problem to solve, right? You just need to start instituting the solutions and practicing them. And so I think that's the next evolution of this offense as well. We talked a lot about Jalen growing as a passer this season, right? Like, I mean, some of our preseason predictions were that Jalen can even surpass his passing yards from last year. And the way that happens is by dealing with the blitz like this, right? It's not necessarily, just getting on the ground and running, but Jalen hitting hot routes. Throw the slant to AJ. Let's start having a slant out there. Let's start having the stick to Dallas, right? So,
or anything to Dallas for that measure.
Yeah, exactly. I think we'll see a lot more Dallas today. It's just kind of what they do. When they miss out on a guy, they go and target him. Remember, like last year, we keep talking about it, the Devontae Smith game, but they came out the next game and they targeted him like 5 times on the first.
And I mean, not even it's bigger than Devontae Smith, because I remember I laid out a stat last year. I think it was from when we were in the Super Bowl or heading into the NFC Championship game, one of the two, where AJ Brown had a bad game the game before. He didn't get the ball much, and basically I was saying how. And all of the games where he had under, I believe it was 50 yards. I think it only happened twice that season. The next game he had over 100 yards. So again, they have a history of rewriting their wrongs. Now, all of this kind of ties into one thing, but trying to rewrite your wrongs. Another person who didn't touch the ball much last week was DeAndre Swift. Now, the Eagles threw 33 passes and ran the ball 25 times last week in New England. Last week versus the Bucks ran the ball 33 times and only gained 73 yards, good for 2.3 yards per carry. So the Vikings rushing defense was fairly stout. Again, we already talked about how the Vikings like to send pressure and possibly having a hot read and things of that nature. What should we be able to expect from the Eagles backfield tonight? DeAndre Swift, assuming that Penny's healthy. I'm assuming that
he's on the he got moved up to active roster.
I'm about to say, I'm assuming that the roster's out now. So, but yeah, he's on the roster. So
I think we see him. I think we see like what we all kind of expected when we signed Rashad and traded for DeAndre. I think Kenny's not going to be there. Unfortunately, he got hurt. You still have Boston Scott, but I think we're going to see a good 1-2 punch from those guys. Maybe some thunder from Rashad and some lightning from DeAndre Swift. I think they're going to try to get the ball in DeAndre's hands as a pass catcher as well, because I mean that's just something where he really, really thrives. And I think they'll try to run the offense through Rashad. Now that might be a little bit predictable, but sometimes predictable is good because it's what you're good at, right? And it's what works. And so I think we'll see a good balance of them. And hopefully we can just start seeing the backfield take shape a little bit more instead of just like, hey, we're going to run this guy into the ground until he gets injured and then move on to the next guy.
Yeah, Sirianni, he alluded to it in his after-game presser in New England. I think he said we never want to come out of a game with DeAndre Swift getting – how many touches did he have? 2, 3?
2.
Yeah, we never want to come out of the game with him having only 2 touches. So I think they're going to make it a point of emphasis, either through the run game or the passing game, to get the ball in his hands.
All right. So real quick before we get you guys out of here, not only do I need predictions for the game, but Kirk Cousins turned the ball over 3 times last week, and it was 2 fumbles and 1 interception. Of course, we know their O-line is well dealing with injuries and things of that nature. I mean, of course, we talked about the injuries the Eagles also have on the defensive side of the ball. Give me your keys to the game, and I need some scores, man.
If I had to give a key to the game, win a turnover battle, whether that be Kirk throwing an interception or fumbles, win the turnover battle, get the ball back for your offense on a short field. And then as far as a prediction, I can't remember what I said on the pod, but I think I'm going to go 31-23 Birds.
Okay. Get it going on offense. Just do your thing. Don't try to overthink it. Get into a good rhythm. Those first 16 plays were good. Let's keep that going the whole game. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game just because of some of the injuries that we have, and I think the offense is going to have to come out on top. Like you said, Pierre, you got to win the turnover battle, and I think the Eagles can do that. They have the ability to make Kirk Cousins throw a primetime pick, right? Yeah, just get it going on offense. This is the same core from last year. You guys still have it. You guys have the explosiveness. We just need to get it going, get the rust out of there a little bit, and then defensively, figure out what we're doing in the middle of the field. I mean, it's the biggest question on all of our minds. TJ Hawkinson is coming to town, who is a top tier tight end. It could be ugly if we don't have a solution, and it could end up being a shootout, which is what I kind of think is going to happen. I think I'll go 35-31 Eagles.
If I have to say, it'll kind of be something similar to what you said, Par, for echoing your sentiment. On the offensive end, all I need to see is we need to get back to playing Philadelphia Eagles football. What I mean by that is when you watch this football team last year, everybody you talked to, no matter who it was, who they worked for, no matter what, all you heard was this football team could win in completely different ways, week by week by week. They found opponents' weakness and they struck at it week by week by week. I need them. Last week versus the Patriots, it felt way too often like we were playing on the defensive end. Even when we were playing offense, it felt like we were playing timid, trying to we weren't in our flow, didn't control the pace of the game, for lack of a better term, which is something we need to get back to. On the defensive side of the ball, the Eagles' defensive line has to win the football game. They have to win the trenches, man. Clearly, the team is going through injuries in the secondary. You guys talked about Justin Jefferson and TJ Hawkinson and how we could potentially, or how they're trying to stop them. Team, it all starts at the front of the front seven. Jalen Carter, we spoke about how he led the NFL and not just defensive tackles, but the entire NFL in pressures last week. Jalen Carter has to keep up with that. We need more from Jordan Davis, who also played very well. Fletcher Cox is suiting up despite the rib injury. We need them boys up front to get to it. Hassan Reddick, Nolan Smith. Yep, Milton Williams, Nolan Smith, Josh Sweat, the guys off the edge. We need all of them. It needs to be a group effort. Get back to, again, playing Eagles football on both sides of the ball. If I had to give a prediction, I'd probably say 17-31 Eagles. And before we let you guys out of here, you guys, you can't get away from me. We're obligated to put out a prop for today. What you guys thinking? I know all the guys got y'all tickets in. What's your favorite ticket for today?
Give me 1 second. Let me load them up here because I got 3 in.
DraftKings had that up 7 early. If the Eagles go up 7 at any point in the game, you get to catch that bet.
That was definitely one of my favorites.
Yep. And then I put some money on some DeAndre Swift receiving yards. One of the lines was at 10. I mean, that's like one good catch and run for DeAndre. I think that's pretty possible. I mean, so for the whole parlay, I guess I'll just say it's Eagles money line, 40 plus receiving yards for Addison, 29.5 for Goddard, 34.5 for Hawk, and then 10 plus receiving yards for DeAndre Swift.
We gotta make sure.
I think for me, my favorite prop of all the ones that I picked, Dallas Goedert over 4 receptions. I really feel like they're going to make it an emphasis to get him involved early and often.
On my end, it's probably the last parlay I just put in. I actually put this in while we were recording, actually. But I'm the degenerate. I'm the degenerate gambler. Listen, brother, I never said I didn't have a problem. I tell you this about everything. We be talking about you when we say these things. I know my issues. For you, step one is acceptance. But on my front, I'd like to say, kind of goes into what we talked about in the pod, man. And kind of how I finished off the Eagles establishing the ball, man, establishing Eagles football. Rashad Penny, I need over 31 and a half yards from you. You need him to pound in between the tackles. Dallas Goedert, I need over 47 and a half yards from you. And we got to emphasize getting Dallas Goedert to football, man. Got to emphasize it, especially without Kenneth Gainwell. I mean, I know we might joke and say that's not a big loss. I seen you on Twitter, Pierre. I seen you on Twitter. But clearly the team, we heard from people and we was looking like, nah, that can't be true, even with all the running back acquisitions.
Right, Christian Darrisaw is active.
Yeah.
He is? Okay.
Yeah, officially active. He practiced on the field. So
okay. But I know we joked about it and how much you and I could run behind that offensive line and things of that nature. But this team clearly feels really well about Kenneth Gainwell for them to keep this same energy from the start of camp all the way to the start of the season. And so it would be nice to see the influence that these backs have. And of course, to finish it all up, you can't forget your over 0.5 interceptions for Kirk Cousins.
Love that one.
Awesome. We're nearing kickoff. I think it's at, was it 8 o'clock, 8:15?
8:15.
One of those few, man.
I just got one more stat I'm going to leave you guys with before we get out of here. The Minnesota Vikings have not won a Thursday night football game on the road in 45 years.
I don't like that.
All right,
you better lock it in, boy. You better lock it in. I hate stats like that.
They are currently on a 6-game skid on the road for Thursday night football.
That's crazy. That's crazy. All right, let's keep the skid going.
We're going to keep it going.
The skid. No.
46 years.
That's insane. Thankful to be an Eagles fan. All right. Well, thank you everyone who joined us. We really appreciate your time hopping in with us. And let's get ready for this game, man. We got a big one. Let's set the tone for the season and come out with a big win tonight.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.
Go Birds.